Hi, everyone. This is the first episode of the Anti-Alias podcast. One fine day, three of us decided at 12 a.m. to do this. So this is our first attempt at that. So the first episode, we are talking about the agency life. All three of us have at some point in our life, been part of an agency. Together, we had worked at Anti-Alias, hence we decided to do this under the Anti-Alias banner. So this is the first episode of like a bunch of other ones that we're going to come up with. So we thought, like it'd be great that to start off, a lot of people have asked us, even a lot of like young students and people who apply to agencies have a bunch of questions we've always wondered. We always thought how to answer them in a short form. But we also felt like there's a need to do like a larger format. So this is our attempt of doing that. I hope you guys enjoy this. We always do look for feedback at the end of the episode, and how we can improve maybe going forward. So the topic for today is, the agency life. We're going to go around with a bunch of introductions since you don't know all of us personally.
So hey
Uh,
guys, I am Abhiroop, and the first thing that we should know about agency life is that there are no timelines. That's why we are sort of recording it at 12 a.m. India time. But yeah, just to give a quick introduction, I've been a marketing consultant for over like 6, 7 years now professionally. Before that, I've done a bunch of other like smaller stints with different marketing and creative agencies. First one being with Anti-Alias, and that's how I know Shivam and Lark. And over the years, all three of us sort of we've seen the whole marketing and advertising and digital technical space sort of evolve from tech stack perspective, the creative output perspective, and also the idea is to discuss sort of how it has evolved and how professionals like us and the younger ones who are sort of entering into the industry can sort of uh, pave their way into the industry. So yeah, hopefully it's going to be an insightful conversation, even though we're all sort of trying to keep ourselves awake.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is the only time we are going to introduce ourselves. So whoever is going to be watching, hopefully they do see this initial part. Because
Yeah.
after this episode, we'll just probably just get right into it. Yeah, go ahead, Lark. I think you're the only one who's left.
Hi guys, I'm Lark, and I have worked with over 150 plus brands in my experience of 15 years, which include Samsung, BBC, UNESCO, TEDx, and some other big names. I would love to, through this podcast, I would love to share my experience with you working with these brands and share the psychology, and brand experience psychology.
Great, Lark. Thanks. A whole lot of experience for everyone to sort of learn from. So yeah, lastly, like I'm Shivam. I've also worked with Lark for over 15 years. Abhirup as well. I've known for almost 10. So yeah, I've also worked at Anti-Alias. I've experienced the agency life. I've also experienced the brand side. So it'd be good to sort of also like kind of share my sort of experience on both agency life on and off, and we sort of go from there. So great, guys. We're going to keep this conversation like a little flowy. So how about we start with just agency experience? Like I think one of the things that we should sort of dive into this call is about like what is it like to work at an agency, right? So I think Abhirup, just maybe you can sort of start with how your experience was. Why also you chose an agency, right? Because I think a lot of young people sort of wonder why, or if at the very early on in the career, because you started in an agency, right? Like you interned at an agency and then sort of started your career from there. And then obviously, like, you went into consulting and did other things, but why should somebody consider, an agency as their first job?
Well, I mean, depends on what career trajectory sort of you want for yourself. I also didn't choose, I would say, the agency life. I What I was clear was that okay, I wanted to do something in marketing because I was sort of interested in it. I found that to be sort of engaging, creatively stimulating. So that's something I wanted to sort of explore. And obviously, I got the opportunity with the agency, and that's how it all started. But yeah, why one should probably, given the day and age, would should start with agencies if you want to really get your hands dirty and you want to get like a full-fledged perspective of how sort of modern day, I would say, marketing, branding, development, the creative side of things happen, you'll get like a 360-degree view in terms of how basically to put out a product and go out and sell. So in that sense, obviously, it's a good first step. You get to then choose whether you're more keen towards the creative side, where you want to like work on the ideas and develop and all, or whether you're more on the sales and client servicing sides, where you want to engage with brands a little more, that's your forte. Or you really are into the technical side, where you're sort of more into, let's say, if it's like content, that you're in the production side. If you're a product, then you're sort of on the development side. So it depends on what eventually where your interest lies in. But if you start with an agency, because a good agency would ideally be doing a bunch of stuff, so you will get like a 360-degree view in terms of at the very early stage of your career. So you'll know essentially where your interests lie and where you can sort of see your long-term future. So that's like one good reason to consider to join an agency early on, especially when you're just probably the final year of your college or straight out of college, undergrad, I mean.
Right. So I think, see, interesting perspective, but a lot of people have this sort of question, or not question, but I think they have this kind of conundrum, right? That should they work for an agency where they'll sort of be a generalist, working for multiple clients, not really focusing on, or not really deep diving into like, one thing really well, just touching the surface on like multiple things, or, working for a brand or like a company where, you really deep dive into like, the creative strategy, the advertising strategy, probably really getting into like the whole campaign, versus an agency where like sometimes you really work at maybe like just like sort of, for example, like graphics, right? But you work on just graphics for social media, but for multiple clients versus one client, and then really getting into it. So I just want to sort of put it to Lark also, because I think, Lark, you come from like a freelance background, right? And then you got into like the agency life. What's your take on also when you sort of made that switch, and why did you make that switch? Just give us some background also, like on, a lot of freelancers out there who are, maybe thinking of starting their own agency. What are some of the pros and cons of starting your own agency, and if anyone should actually even do it, or or were you happy as a freelancer and you probably hate your life now? Like, I mean, walk us through that.
So basically, I would walk even before my life, as I started as a freelancer or even agencies. Like when I was in college, I had no clue basically what not exactly in college, but when I finished my school, I wanted to do something creative. I just knew that from the beginning that I wanted to end up into a creative field. I don't want to end up in marketing, management. I wouldn't say marketing, but management or engineering or all of these traditional sort of fields. Though my family would love that I end up doing that. So I want to do something creative, and that's what I knew. So I joined the uh, creative college. I joined as a fashion designer because that's the only thing that I knew about that. Okay, fashion designing is creative, and I want to do something creative. So I joined the fashion college. But fortunately, my fashion college also had other disciplines, which I was completely unaware of when I joined the college. But the first year of the college is pretty much similar for everyone. So if you're in a fashion field, if you're an interior designer field, or even like communication graphics, the year is common for all the foundation students. And that's how, when I was in foundation, I learned about or came to know about that other creative dimensions or fields also exist on the graduation or college level. And while I was doing my projects and other things, it's my one of the teacher who actually saw that my working style and what I like, and told to me that, Lark, I think you should switch to communication design. If you stay in fashion design, you will basically waste your life. And I took his advice like first, actually very seriously, and I said like, okay, I'm going to make that switch. And fortunately, there was a possibility that I can make a switch. And I'm still thankful for him to give me that advice. And I made that switch actually. And when I made that switch, I realized that, okay, I find it more interesting to work on brands, to make logos for them, to make graphics for them. And through that, I started to learn more on the graphics in the college itself, on the graphics side, the software, the tools, and also my inclination towards UI, UX in that moment, which is like almost 15 or I think now 20, almost, yeah, 15, 16 years back, or even more. The UI UX was a very novice or a new term, and not a lot of people knew about it. It was
Yeah,
up.
just to sorry, just to give context to everyone also. Like I think what Lark is saying, like when we started, we were actually one of the only company or one of the first guys who actually started using the term UI UX. There was, I think these are early days of design where people didn't know really what it was. I think every day at work, I remember coming to Lark in the morning, and I think the first argument we used to have was what is UI and what is UX. And then we used to try to come up with our own definition and own understanding of it. So I think from that to today, like, obviously like a lot has evolved and we've seen that kind of evolution of UI UX as well. So just thought, I would sort of make this distinction, but yeah, sorry, like carry on. Sorry to like cut you off, but go ahead.
Yeah, so as Shivam said, the UI UX was a new age term in those times. And even for me, like to figure out at that moment, okay, like that what I want to do in my career, and also when we started the agency, how to take it forward, with the discipline. So what I did is I did more research on UI UX. I watched a lot of videos, tutorials, even read books. There was the book by Dan Norman, which talks about the usability. So it doesn't talk about interfaces because the book is quite old and it was written like I think in 90s or even like 1980s, when basically the screens were not that popular. So it talks about the things like what should be the usability factor. So let's say if you're opening a door, where the door handle should be. If you're pulling something, then should it
Great
be
book, yeah.
or that. So it's all about making experiences and how you can make those experiences better and simplify that for the user. And further, like how you can adapt now it onto the screen interfaces, like where the button should be placed, where it should be easily visible. So basically through that book and through all of those different resources, I started learning more about the UX and UI. And then when it became mainstream, I became more experienced in while designing again, like using softwares and that. I became more experienced in those interfaces, uh, interface design, sorry. Then when I graduated, I was like thinking, okay, maybe I will join some agency. And I actually did.
But you freelance for a while, right? So like tell us about the difference
I'm
between
coming about that.
freelance.
Yeah, of course. I'm
Yeah.
coming about that. So basically, while I was in college, I started to intern. I interned at two, three places, but I started to do a full-time job also while I was in college. So it was not like a full-time job, but kind of a part-time job, I would say. But it was not internship, it was a job, and started to do that. I enjoyed it. I was working on like some projects, but always I felt like, okay, that I'm not enough or able to take the ownership, because again, like someone who was on top of me was guiding the final decisions. I was like working majorly on the as a back burner. So it was a good experience, but I felt like, okay, that something is missing. And then when I left that that job, then I started to work as a freelancer. I worked with a couple of clients. I was designing their graphics on the clothes, basically. So I was making like a lot of graphic wearable stuff. I also did branding for them because they were rebranding it. So it was called KBSH, and they launched a new brand called Divani, and which was associated with Bollywood celebrities and with Yash Raj films. So I used to design like a lot of graphic wearable stuff for them. But again, like I realized like I can be a freelancer, but I can do just a bit of it. Like I cannot work a lot because the time that I have available, I can just do that. Then I even like thought like, okay, let me experience more before I do something like, because I always had a plan to open my own agency, but I thought like, okay, after freelance, let's open agency. But I said like, okay, let me first be part of another agency and see how things works over there. So I joined this another company, but I quit it like in 20 days. I couldn't take it more. So that was like I would say my first and the last job as like working with that. And I was like, it was really nice company in terms of like agency, in terms of like they had very big clients, including some of the names like California Almonds, Dawat, India Gate Basmati Rice, and all of the good clients. I was working on the ATL part and the BTL part. ATL is the above the line, like more the TVCs and TV commercials, and below the line are like the graphics and like the brochures and all of those. So I gained, I would say, a substantial experience just by understanding these terms. But I constantly realized that, okay, something is still missing because, again, like even in those 20 days, I felt like, okay, I'm wasting my time. I'm not able to use my full potential. Even the director of the company, he used to love my work, and he asked me like why I want to leave, and he didn't want me to leave actually, but I literally started to feel like miserable in front of him, and he said like, Clark, I cannot see you like this, better you go and follow your journey. So that's how I went from there, and I decided that okay, I will start my agency. And then how that's how I met Shivam, and then I decided okay, let's start this and do a proper thing, because it's always a difficult, not difficult, I would say, but it's more fearful, or sometimes like you start to think about or get like in two thoughts that, okay, do you want to do this or not, or this? But when you have someone, then you take a call, and then like, okay, you push and do
Both, right?
something.
Like, yeah, I think it's hard for both, founders and employees, right? So I think it's an interesting perspective, but obviously, I think like, the idea for us also for this discussion was to cover both sides. Like, I mean, you rightly mentioned that you had worked for an agency like for 20 days and you hated it. I think, both experiences are very different. We would love to also hear from Abhiroop's experience because I think he sort of initially had that employee experience in an agency on how it was working. And so give us that side too, Abhirup. Like, why don't you like walk us through like what your experience was when you first started in an agency?
I also, my first agency job was again with you guys only, but that was in what, 15, I think. So almost 10
Yeah.
years. Yeah, 10 years to that. I started as an intern, then worked a little bit full time. And because I would say I wasn't completely on the creative side of things, it was more in terms of, campaign planning, and then sort of figuring out the GTM and how to launch a campaign, put that product, the brand's product out in the market and see results. So I think that rush is what sort of kept me engaged. And the fact that, okay, it wasn't just like, let's say, one company, one product, one campaign, but multiple things.
Yeah.
So it kept you stimulated, I would say, in that sense that, okay, if you're sort of stuck in one problem, you can also ideally, I mean, that is something probably that you can do back then, probably not the best advice now, because so much happening, you've got to
Things
focus.
have evolved. Yeah,
Yeah,
things
things
have.
have evolved. You've got to be a little more focused. You've got to sort of factor in a lot of things. But yeah, back in the day, just when you're in college, you want to sort of gather as much information as possible. That's why I would reiterate the sentence that depends on what stage of your life and how in journey you're at. If you're really sort of at a place where you want to sort of explore and figure out where exactly is your calling, and you want to sort of within the value chain of, I would say, like whatever an agency can offer, I would say that is starting with an agency definitely helps if you still want to figure, like for example, I guess in Lark's case, he was sort of clear in terms of what he wanted to do and what he didn't want to do. So that is why he understood what all was not working for him. In my case,
Correct.
I was still open in that sense back in the day, in terms of I wasn't really I would say like there was not an option for me in terms of saying no to too many things. So I was open to sort of exploring, and then I figured out, okay, where am I enjoying most, and where I'd want my time to go in. So in that sense, for me, agency sort of helped my initial agency life sort of helped me sort of develop that initial journey of my career, which essentially helped because after agency, then I sort of did a full-time job in the marketing domain only, where I was looking into slightly because at that point of time, if you remember, performance and all have come in now, but back in the day it was just Google Ads, Google Display, the Google Display Network.
Yeah, yeah.
Everybody,
I think the channels like we have today, I think it didn't exist probably
it
like
didn't exist then.
even
So
eight, ten
everything was
years
new
ago.
back then, and everything was sort of evolving. getting that Google partner tag. I remember, and Auntie Elise was also,
Was a big deal
we,
for us. Yeah, when we
it was a
first
big deal
started.
for us, and we were also one of the first people, at least in Delhi, back then, to get that digital Google
Correct.
partner, tag. That was
Correct.
like one of the, so those kind of
Yeah,
things
absolutely.
essentially,
Yeah.
uh,
I have a very funny story I think you should share with about your internship. I just remembered. So I think that would be some very interesting things on like, like the first internship experience that people have and how agencies is all about hustle, right? Like I think one of the things that I wanted to say was, as a founder, is just hustle, 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 right? You have to fake it till you make it, right? Like you
yeah,
biggest clients, but then if you go from a point of weakness where you're saying, hey, like we're just like starting out with like these two young kids, no big brand will take you seriously, right? They will not give you that seat at the table. So at
yeah,
some point, like you kind of have to like really show that okay, you already have big clients and you already have like some level of at least a right to be there, right? So one funny story comes from there where like I think I remember you were interning with us, and I think it was your first month. And I want you to tell the story, right? So I'm just like sort of setting it up for you. But I remember we were pitching Jet Airways at the time, like if you
yeah,
remember.
yeah,
And we had worked with one or two okay clients, and I think we were working out like for like an apartment somewhere in I think Patel Nagar in Delhi. And I remember it was like a sort of like a very house setup, but we kind of had tried to do it professionally. We had like a boardroom and like we had like all this like signing in with like a RFT card, like like
mm,
we tried to give it like a cool effect. But at the end of the day, it was still like a colony in
mm,
like West Delhi, right? So the houses and everything were a little on the smaller side, right? So I wanted you
yeah.
to tell us about that, like that experience of meeting them and like that whole like that episode that happened. Like I don't even know if Lark's aware. I think you should tell him also, like because I think he's not aware of that story. Because I know you and I have discussed it, but I think there's a story to be retold for sure.
Yeah, so one thing which goes without saying, especially when you're working with an agency, that to a smaller agency, niche agency, at least back in the day, you definitely
Yeah,
didn't have a lot of money like for a fancy office,
of
like with
course.
those cool murals and everything, artwork and all. So we sort of worked with I would say like a makeshift office, but more like a residential setup turned into an office and stuff. But again, you've got to aim big, and that's what we were doing. So after we got our Google Ads partner sort of tag, and we had like a meeting with the big companies and all. We finally got our first meeting with Jet Airways because they were, I think, launching their digital portal. They wanted us to design their the web interface as well as their plan out their digital marketing for them. So we had called them for the meeting, and we were sort of suggesting that okay, we'll probably meet somewhere outside because that was our ploy, that we'll always
Yeah,
meet
we
them
didn't
at
want them
some
to come to the office, right? So I
at
think
some
they insisted. They
uh,
insisted on coming and seeing the office. They
exactly,
wanted
but that's
to
what they
meet
wanted to
them.
see.
Yeah.
Because with agencies, another thing which goes, and I don't know why it's still the case, with so much of data available, there's still that question mark, though people still have that apprehension that okay, whether it's an legit agency or not, and you want to see an office, you want to see how big is the setup and everything, and not just the work. So they had come to the office, and unfortunately, Delhi being Delhi, everybody is just too loud. So the moment they enter the lane and they park their car suddenly, and I'm right there
No, no, but
waiting.
before that, tell them also like how we were going crazy about planning. We had sent you
Yeah,
down, be like, oh, you have to come and bring them up.
yeah, yeah,
We got the whole conference room clean where actually people used to sit. It was like like
yeah,
that nice round table we had, but people would actually work. There was their workstation, so we cleaned that
yeah.
up, made it into like a conference room,
But
like a makeshift one, and then we sent you down to bring them up from the back door. I remember because we didn't
yeah,
want them to come to the front of the office.
yeah.
And then yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So that's what I was saying, that we had done that whole, we had prepared a full, I would say, like a presentation. We had the conference room set up. We had a good, I would say like a food platter also set up in that conference table and all. We wanted to make it like a proper professional setup. It's just that we had to ensure that they have like a smooth entry. And that being a residential setup, it had like a smaller staircase which had like a grill entrance and all, and they had a hard time parking the car and all. But I was still there helping them out through and through at the peak of the summer. Got their car parked, that too in a Delhi, a residential colony where parking itself is like a mess and you can't mess around with somebody else's parking. Somehow managed that as well. The moment they get out of the car and I'm sort of walking them into the meeting, I wanted to make sure that they, luckily it was just first floor, I wanted to make sure that they just go up, see that biometric and get inside. But suddenly our landlord lady, not even the guy, but the lady in her typical attire, she comes in and like I just greeted her and wanted to just get done with the whole like meet and greet shenanigan. But then she came in and like, yeah, meeting, hello, I namaste, to theek hai, but ask your boss to sort of switch off the motor, the water is leaking. So,
She
and
said it. She said it in Hindi, right? She's like, हाँ उनको बोलो पानी बंद करे, पानी गिर
पानी
रहा
बंद करे,
है.
तो मोटर बंद करे, पानी गिर रहा है
No, no,
आपका.
no. I think the story went like, they were parking, and before you could say anything, they asking, "Can we park here?" And they were like, "Yeah, parking to theek hai."
Hmm.
And I think she told
Yeah,
them,
yeah, yeah, correct.
and
Yeah.
then you overheard it, and then
Hmm.
you came and told us, you were like, this embarrassing moment happened. And I remember, like, I laughed so much. I was like,
Hmm.
dude, imagine trying to create this whole impression with,
Hmm.
like these big clients, and all of a sudden, वो उनको बोल रहे हैं, यार पानी बंद करो, आपका मोटर लीक हो रहा है.
Right.
So, one of those fond memories we had, man, from the time.
Yeah, but the crux of this entire thing is that like when you say agency, you have to again look at it from the perspective of whether you're somebody who's open to exploring what your career path could be, or whether you're someone who's somewhat clear in terms of what you want to do, and then you choose maybe one, what kind of agency do you want to work with? Do you want to work with a bigger agency where you get to work with, let's say, bigger brands? The pros and cons are pretty much that okay, you get to work with bigger brands, bigger clients, massive budgets, multiple sort of media channels to explore. But yeah, the con being that they are very hard on with their mandates, they are very hard on with their brand guidelines. There's not a lot of room for you, especially as a young, as a professional, somebody who's very new to the setup, to sort of explore, pave your way in, sort of get your word into the whole conversation of how a brand should be perceived out there. So in that sense, if you're okay with sort of giving it like, let's say, 2 3 years in terms of just learning the tips and tricks of the trade and a lot of letting your own insights take a backseat for some time, then definitely a big agency is a very good option for you. If you really like love a particular agency for the kind of work that they do, could be content, could be development, could be design, could be marketing campaigns, could be anything. Go for a niche agency where the teams are smaller, you have a better say in terms of how you want to execute and all. You have a lot more ownership. That is definitely one way of looking into things. If you want complete ownership and you don't want to like get into the restriction of where a client dictates completely in terms of what you want to do, freelancing is also a good option, because now a lot of companies are sort of at least the new age D2C, and that is like a big difference right now to
Then what
10
it
years
used to be.
ago. 10 years
Yeah.
ago, because there was no concept of startups, D2C brands, younger professionals sort of starting their own company, the hesitance of working with freelancers was very big. So that is why the chance, the option of being a freelancer versus working with an agency or having your own setup wasn't, there was a big sort of difference in that. Today, a lot of startups and D2C founders are young guys. They have their budget constraints. That is definitely one of the key considerations, but also they understand that okay, everybody starts from scratch, and they are very much open to working with freelancers. They are very much open to working with a bunch of freelancers or a group of people who can sort of work in some kind of synergy together. As long as the synergies are there, they're open to working with freelancers as well, and you have a lot of, I would say, in terms of creative freedom, in terms of doing what you really want to do. So right now the canvas is a lot more open. But yeah, if you really want to have a structured learning path as a fresh, I would say, graduate or somebody who's just starting your career, agency is definitely a good option.
Right. So I think again the flip side is that a lot of people who start with brands, right? Like I mean, I think recently, like me and Abhirup had also worked on a perfume brand together for like almost 2 years. So I think one of the things that I kind of figured out in we also had a huge creative team. I think we were almost like 10, 12 people just in the creative team itself. And I think one of the things that I kind of discovered, during that phase with a lot of the young, because we also had like a lot of, freshers coming in, in the creative department, and it was their first job. And a lot of them, like, surprisingly, like, like told me that they want to work for an agency, right? And coming from an agency background, like, working in anteriors for almost 15 years, one of the things that I always figured out that, people want to work in an agency, fine, because I think it's easier to get a job, they feel. But eventually, like, they want to settle at a brand, like, they want to work for a no-name company. I feel that is also changing, like I feel initially, it was a lot more to do with what brand you're working for. I think today people are open to exploring other things as long as they're they get the creative fix right. And I mean, again, it's my opinion. What I've seen, I'm sure, like there are differences of opinions here, but I've also seen that the fact that people now are looking to sort of do more and not just be doing like monotonous same like brand work. ठीक है, like perfume है तो like perfume का आपने Instagram पे post बना दिया है and then you're gonna make it on like something else. Like I think people want to kind of get into like 3D stuff, get into like video editing, getting into animation, getting into other things which kind of didn't exist earlier. Because I think UI UX early days, people wanted to really become like a very good UI UX designer. But I think now with tech coming in also, there are so many tools. Like, and I think what app craze is also gone. Like I think when we had started, people was like nuts about apps, right? Everybody was building an app. So there was like a huge need of UI UX also for the app. Today, like I think that building a new app is kind of, that craze is gone. How like D2C today is, like I would say like about 8-10 years ago, the same thing was building a mobile app. Everyone was getting a mobile app. You have an idea, okay, I want to make an app. Okay, and for the app, what do you need? For, like the first step, you need UI UX design, right? So there was a huge like sort of demand for UI UX designers, wherein people also weren't in that field. But today, I think that's kind of gone down, because not a lot of the UI UX work that you get today is people who are already like companies who are already out there, or brands who are out there, are kind of wanting to maybe revamp or like sort of upgrade their application. But like a lot of new applications are not coming on the market anymore. A lot of people now, especially D2C brands, they're okay with a very good Shopify website, like which is also giving them the e-commerce fix. A lot of the new tech-based applications, like which were earlier coming in very very niche categories, are no longer coming up, right? So I think that kind of is also evolved, right? So I think just from that perspective, Lark, what's your take been? Because you've also seen this transition from very early on, like we were discussing earlier, like about UI UX design, and like where do you see this going? Because you're really part of the industry. You work with a lot of professionals on a day-to-day basis, and of course across continents, right? So what is your take on like how this is going to evolve, and how is the need going to be for UI UX designers and creative professionals going forward, let's say in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think with the new age apps and like specifically the development of AI, a lot of things are becoming automated. By automated, I mean like it has become easier for the expertise what only previously existed with, let's say, a good UI UX designer. Now the AI have the same sort of an expertise to audit your website, audit the design, even create some sort of mock-ups, layouts, and different aspects. Specifically, when it comes to copy, it has been mastered already, I would say, and slowly the design is being mastered. So previously, like if we need if there's a landing page, and this is what was also used to happen in our agency, is like we need a specific copywriter or a content writer to create the copy for the landing page, or we even like the client has a team to do that, or hire external copywriters. So it depends again, like if they want us to have a content writer or use their own content writer. But nowadays there is no longer case, Chat GPT, the other AI tool, Gemini, all of these other all of these, sorry, AI tools, they have that potential to create a good copy for your landing page. So even for the UI UX designer.
Yeah, I think the biggest sorry, just to add to what you're saying, I think one of the biggest needs, or you can say one of the biggest roles that AI has really killed, is that role of like a copywriter or like a content writer even, right? Even long form content, like putting blogs on your website, because a lot of people wanted to really leverage SEO and stuff on their website, right? So I think for that also, I think the content stuff initially, where it would take like, even an agency like a lot of time to do it today, people are like churning out blogs, like 5-10 blogs a day, if they really want, right? So probably even more if they really sort of go for it. But and even copy, and I'm not sort of you can say like degrading the work of a really good copywriter, because there are a lot of good, very smart, talented copywriters out there. But I think for the majority ones, which are sort of average, I would say, their job is really being taken away by AI, because now a lot of brands like are sort of, very comfortable, like, even writing, let's say, their ad copy, right, on like Instagram or a Facebook or on a Google or on any other these social media applications. And they're using AI, and they're being able to generate the kind of engagement that they're looking for, right? Especially with the right keywords, the tags. Whereas it would take a long time for even a marketing professional to come up with those tags, and probably use like more paid tools and stuff like that. So I think that kind of gap is also being filled now with the AI tools.
Yeah, for example, what I was talking about is like previously when we are designing a landing page, then we first, let's say, do a wireframe. We do sort of a mock concept. We put a lot of lorem ipsum text, like because we do not have a correct copy available or
Right.
the content right available. But with the new emerging AI technologies and tools, you don't need to put any more lorem ipsum text. You just can create a very refined content which can actually serve as a more refined mock-up version, as opposed to something which client might have to relook, do reiterations, and then change the design. So the design trajectory also has become more refined and streamlined, as opposed to previously how there used to be a lot of back and forth because the content is not available until the layout is existing. But that's no longer the case. The content can be prepared in advance and the layout can then be designed. So it's like opposite of what used to happen previously. And even like with the new tech coming out every day, the AI can also create different variations of the landing page itself. So for you to evaluate and then do an A/B test on that, even with the client and even in the real time. So yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And so just yesterday, I was just playing around with WordPress, for example. Even they have like this AI, and I was able to like create like 7, 8 pages, decent pages, just through AI. Just giving a few prompts, and like gave me like the complete layout, of like what I really wanted. Okay, and I mean, sure, they had some paywall behind it, but 90% it was amazing, like exactly what I wanted. The kind of and they filled in the content also, just to what you were saying. There was no lorem ipsum text, relevant content. So for a lot of clients, where they would have a gap, right? Like understanding, okay, acha, like how is my actual text going to look in this section? Now, I think when you use these AI tools and you actually fill with the real content, which, as a designer, you really don't want to get into, right? Because that's not your sort of core expertise. So you would want to work with a copywriter. So that's an extra additional resource that you would work with. Here, I think nowadays, with like, with these AI tools, they kind of auto-generate it. So for a client, that's also amazing, right? Because when they see it, they're like, oh, like, this is great. Like, I can also now understand, like, how like my business or my kind of business logic fits into the whole design, right? Which I think from a client side was in, like when they see lower websites, like, yeah, acha, isme kuch missing hai. Ye to rough design banaya aapne, या like, what I mean? Like they would have those kind of
yeah.
uh,
And
sort of
even it's
things.
difficult for a client itself to make a decision with lorem ipsum text, because what can probably work with an actual text might not work with lorem ipsum and vice versa. So they also don't have that clarity. So they are not wrong on their part also while making the decision, because it's like, for example, I'm showing you a dress in green color, and when you cannot visualize how it will look with black color because you want black color actually, but I'm making you visualize that dress in green color. So I mean, like it's fair to like I mean, like from their side as well, like not to even make that decision. But now no longer that is the case. So I think with this new emerging tech, it's not like the you will get a perfect output, but it's very much have become easier for the people, or like, let's say, designer or anyone using these tools to create something with perfection. So avoiding mistakes in terms of final outputs, whether it would be copy, whether it be design. You can, I mean, like again, like because I keep on using the new AI tools. So I know, like if I tell them to design me a logo, I know it will not be able to design a logo what a designer can do, but of course it can definitely help them brainstorm certain ideas, brainstorm different like resources. So so it is an added tool for them to make things easier, make them brainstorm without going on different resources and refining them. But again, like it's not a perfect, I would say, replacement still
Yeah,
for
but
like.
this is what I was sort of gonna ask both of you because both of you have run this agency, and I've also looked at it from a brand side company point of view where you've built a creative team. Now, I know that if I have to tomorrow, let's say, hire a person in my marketing team, I know maybe how I'll judge that person, but just to take your perspective, to today, and both you and both Lark and Shivam, today, if you have to hire someone, would you ask a particular candidate to develop that product, let's say right now on a Photoshop or let's say or a Canva or any other tool, or would you give them the tool and give them the problem statement and ask them that give me a prompt which you think will probably uh, give me a close enough developed product on which you can sort of work on, which essentially gives you the direction in which the creative person is thinking more than the, I would say, the hands-on experience on the tool per se. So what, according to you, right now is more important, given that the access of tool is becoming much more easier to everyone, for a creative person as well as for a creative agency? Not, and I'm purely talking about in creative agency right now. What is more important, the direction or or I would say the proficiency with the tool?
I would say the proficiency with the tool is more important as opposed to direction, because AI tools can give you a lot of direction, but the final output is not what they can generate perfectly for you. So I would say like it actually gives more ability to someone who is on a, I would say, on a lower level access or no, I wouldn't say lower level job, but let's say if there's an agency and then there's a hierarchy, which is like you have a creative head, then you have a designer, then you have a developer. So today I would say a designer can do both of the things what a creative head can do and a developer can do, so it's like someone who is in the middle gets more opportunity with these tools, or I would say more accessibility to everything using this tool. So it's like eliminating the top part and the bottom part, and someone who can easily use this tool can design, can develop the website as well as can do the creative thinking, because how these tools function. So that's something, these tools probably are not the end to the means, like it will not fully develop a product for you. Though a lot of tools are now coming and doing that, but still I feel like that that major use case, what the end goal of any creative or the product is still missing, but if you rely completely on these tools. So you need someone who can use these tools to create the final version. Also, it very much depends on the company that or the brand that you're working with. So for example, let's say if there's a small brand, a smaller company, then probably they might not look for a deeper expertise of agency or a designer. They can probably use these tools and can suffice themselves. But if it's a bigger company or a bigger brand, they would still want that perfection. So let's say if there's a company selling meat or a small startup selling a meat, then maybe they will not probably wants to invest a lot of in the agency or designer. They can use pretty much these tools to create their social media graphics. But let's say if it's a very big company, like a Samsung or some other big name, then they would like that perfection and would avoid using these tools solely to create their end graphics. But of course, like when it comes to the agency, then agency is like in a win-win situation, that they can use these tools to create, enhance their productivity of their designers, of their people working in the agency, the designers, their complete manpower, even the sales, like sales team can use these to create great sales pitches, enhance their content, and everything. So I think that that's a win situation for the agency. And it depends again, like which brands they're working with.
What about you?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, I agree with a lot what Lark said, but just to, I mean, see, I have two different perspectives here, right? Like, one is, I think, obviously, like what I look for when I'm hiring somebody. So I think that's kind of different to what you asked. So I'm going to kind of leave that out, because I think my hiring criteria is very different, when I look at somebody for a certain role. But just specifically, like I think if I'm just looking at the two things that that you asked, I think for me the important thing here would be the aesthetic, right? Like I think that's why I think a lot of times when I hire creative people, I mean, obviously Lark is in a much better place to hire like a creative person than I am. But like in my last company also, like I guess like I was in charge of hiring the creative team. So I would just say that for me, I think one of the biggest, most important things is their aesthetic on like what they really feel is
Exactly.
a bad design. And I think that's why, like for me, it's very important for them to even do like a small design task, like just to see like what they really feel, and even if they're not able to execute it, like in terms of tools, because I think tools like for younger people, I think they can still hone the skills, right? Because I think it's just practice. Like I think
Mm,
but if they don't have that aesthetic, no matter how good they get at using Photoshop, they will never be able to do like design that probably like meets my eye, or like is the kind of work that I want to do for my clients.
yeah.
So for me that is very important, like matching the aesthetic with that person. Like does he do they like what I like? Do they see something as good design or something that catches the eye that I do? I think that is very, very important, for me specifically, when I'm looking to hire.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of align more towards this thought process, but that's probably because both you and I, we are probably not so much in as a creative person, as more, you know, like more
Like
on the
managers, like
marketing
creative
side,
managers, like
managers.
more marketing side, more
Because
managers.
right now
Like
I'll tell you, I'm
I've done
working with,
sales mostly. Yeah.
I was like recently I was working with this one uh, uh creative person who's very hands-on with a lot of tools. But but the problem that I faced with that person was that if I tell that person to, okay, I've given you the sort of brief idea in terms of what kind of post I want, there's very, I would say, there's no creative insight in terms of how I can sort of design or develop the the post. I'm giving you a very like a small example, but if I give an example that okay, I want this kind of post for my brand, let's say, the ability to replicate that design or create a better design is definitely there. So the proficiency with the tool is definitely there. If I'll probably replicate, probably ask that person to replicate like a digital Mona Lisa, the person will be able to do it. But if I have to ask that person to think and then draw a Mona Lisa on their own, probably that's not there. So that is why my question, that should somebody uh, first consider as an agency to a person who's able to think creatively that oh, probably this kind of post works, or this kind of creative works, or this kind of direction works, and then get into the execution mode, or probably these are like two different roles, whereas one person decides, okay, this is how I want my brand to look like, feel like, and that is where the aesthetics come in, and probably that is more on the management side, whereas the designer's role is just to execute it and bring the best version of that thought out.
Yeah, you're very
Yes.
right. Abirup,
Sorry,
I
go
guess.
ahead.
Sorry, yeah, I was saying you're very right, Abhirup. It also depends on the experience of a designer,
Mm,
So the problem that you're facing is, or if the problem that you mentioned, if it's a junior designer, then
mm,
definitely that problem is going to be there. But if it's a little experienced designer, then that problem can completely be eliminated.
got it.
So if the designer is like doesn't have literally uh, what we call it, a brain to think, then we cannot call him a designer. He's just
Mm,
like someone good with Photoshop, because if
exactly.
he's just a good technician or a technical person who knows how to use Photoshop or like Illustrator. He's not a
Mm,
designer, but if a good designer would always know how to think, how to problem solve, how to
mm,
brainstorm and bring a desired solution.
yeah,
So I would say like it depends on that. And if a designer has that good insight, then that person with the like which needs to be on top of him, a creative head or a person who needs to solve the problem, can be eliminated using the AI tools, because then that person can go to Chat GPT or Gemini, state the problem, figure out different scenario solutions, and decide and even ask them that okay, what will be the good solution to implement out of these different options you have given. But if the person doesn't know how to communicate the problem, then he's not a good designer, he's just a technician. And then you need, of course, someone who you actually will call a designer, who thinks but doesn't need to necessarily use these tools to produce an output.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, see, I think, like with skills and tools, today everyone can be like a designer to a certain extent, right? Like everybody can design a logo through AI prompts. And
A very controversial statement.
no, it's true, right? Like, not that I'm trying to, be controversial or, piss people off, but the idea is like, I've seen people today, like, they don't have a design aesthetic. For example, like,
Mm,
I don't consider myself as a designer, right? And I know what good design and bad design is because I've seen Lark at work personally. So I think it's my experience that kind of tells me, okay, this is the kind of stuff that I like. This is stuff that's cool. This is stuff that, goes well.
yeah.
Maybe it's just my aesthetic, right? Maybe somebody doesn't like that kind of design, and it's fine. It's very subjective.
Mm,
But I think I know when I see bad design, right? Like maybe it's even something like, the usage of like a font, right? Which like probably doesn't go with my aesthetic. So what I'm trying to say is that I think today, like a lot of people can like, like startup founders try it all the time, right? Like when they don't have budgets to maybe hire a designer and pay them like, like probably something even like a couple of lakhs, right? To maybe do the branding and like, and all that stuff, right? So my point is that today they would probably go on like a Canva and like, use these tools and, create maybe their packaging design, their and their logo and stuff like that. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, and it's fine like to
mm,
hustle and like, kind of cut corners and go ahead. But they themselves, like I think by cutting these corners, don't like kind of I mean, you can't equate that for like, hiring an agency or like a designer, what Lark said. I mean, that's like a completely different thing, right? Although that it may work for you, but that's not equivalent to like, hiring like a good designer and and making like a proper real logo which has some thought process to it, right? Like this is something which is fine, is created with AI through some prompts, but doesn't really have like that life, which still I feel like you do need some human eye to it, some human element to it, like somebody
mm,
who like, has that, like what Lark said, like, that design aesthetic. So so yeah, like so I think just to sort of circle back, like yeah, like I think it's very important to have that kind of aesthetic to sort of like make it. And I think those are the people who still will even when these AI tools are like sort of widespread, like some of them already are, but even like as they evolve, like like the job of the designer will probably change from execution to aesthetic and like maybe understand exactly what they want and if it works for the brand or not, right? And I think
right.
that eye for it is what is important, right? Because execution is something that I think I mean, apart from AI, even if you like, like practice a tool for 6 months, you can become really good at Photoshop, for example. But does that make you like a good designer? Probably not, right? Like, I mean, you still need that aesthetic sense. You still need to understand design. You still need to, again, going back to what Lark even said beginning of the this sort of podcast, right? That he was reading books on like Dan Norman and understanding like design of everything, everyday things, right? So I think those are those little things also, like even in terms of psychology and everything that come into play. So a lot to be sort of sort of uncover there in my view.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, basically, relevance of agency doesn't go just because now we have better tools, accessible tools, and it's not that a tool is going to take up jobs that probably a
Yeah.
designer had.
No,
It's just
I think makes the
maybe just
life
for
of a
the
lot of people easier,
technician.
right? Yeah. See, I think like brands today, like see there are two sides to it, right? According to me, right? Like one is that see brands take the time out and are not lazy enough to probably hire an agency. A lot of them can still get away with just using AI tools and doing all the things that the agency would do for them, right? Now when it comes to like certain things like performance, right? I think performance is something that, okay, sure, like, there are agencies out there are experts out there who can probably like, maybe do like a better job than maybe what you can do yourself or maybe your internal team can. And sometimes it's just a bandwidth issue for with brands, right? And why they're outsourcing to agencies. But agencies, I think if you really like sort of look at if they're working with a brand and one of the major issues that they're trying to solve is the fact that they just don't have time for multiple things like putting up posts on social media, like, making sure that that page is sort of active. Um, I think these tools just help even agencies, right? Like, I think like the execution level, like wherein like we were making 1-2 posts a day, like, and we were like, maybe stuck because we didn't have the right copy or, even if the design was ready, there are some element missing. Today, I think everything is just, at a place where, you can 4, 5x that effort, right? You can maybe make 10 posts a day, if you really think about it. So even at that time, I remember we used to like try to templatize things. Now today, all those templates are already available, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
what we had done at our agency early days was like what Lark had done actually. He had made templates of certain things, right? So and it would just make our job faster. Try to be, it was our way of automating things. But now today, those things are already there, with these tools.
Mm-hmm.
So I think lastly, I think I mean maybe I think there's so much more to uncover about agency life, and maybe I think we can do another episode. But I think
Yeah.
lastly, if you guys um just want to maybe talk about so there is this whole business side of things also, right? But I don't know if we should cover it all of this in this episode. But I think one of the things that we can sort of end the call with is again like just your like I think in a few words maybe or like a few sentences your experience at the agency. So want to hear from a founder perspective also, like I mean Lark, moving on from your past experiences to how this was, and then maybe you talk about your experience in a nutshell versus your later experiences, right? Just I mean we can just like sort of talk about the differences.
So from my experience at agency, it was like the goal why you are starting an agency should needs to be very clear. Uh, for example, if you think like that you will be your own boss at agency, and that's how you want to open an agency, then maybe that's not a good way to think because your boss is your client, you know. So it doesn't matter what you like, it needs to be ultimately liked by your client. So
Agency, you have no boss. Like I mean, nutshell, like you're listening to your clients, then you're coming listening to your team, and then you're going back to the client and asking them for money. So it's quite a merry-go-round, right? So you never feel like really in control. Like you're always asking, and I mean I don't want to say begging, but like you literally are, right?
yeah, that's right. And also, when it comes to streamlining processes, then because the things changes at so fast pace that sometimes it becomes like really difficult to streamline a lot of things, whether it be a creative process, whether it be a sales process or anything. Uh, so, uh, so if someone is like open to that and want to explore that and likes to experiment and sort of follow an agile methodology or whatever you call in terms of processes that constantly things are changing and they enjoy doing that, then definitely agency is something that okay they would love doing. And that's a biggest difference when it comes to someone who wants to join an agency or join a product company or even open agencies like when you are in a product company, things are more streamlined because you know, okay, the brand values work like this, the brand identity work like this. They have a very standard pattern because everything is set already and it doesn't change constantly. Okay, it can change from campaign to campaign, but it doesn't drastically changes. But when you are working in agency or you're running an agency, then for each brand, you have to constantly keep on thinking differently and produce differently because they have their own values, they have their own methodology, they have their own value systems, design systems, and everything. So if you love to experiment, try different things, do not want to follow a standard protocol or pattern, then joining or working or owning an agency is good for you. But if you prefer, let's say, a peaceful mind, you don't want to get nightmares or
Mm-hmm.
constantly because I mean like I'm joking, but I mean like some people love to think
No, you're not.
if you
but,
want
but it's
uh,
okay.
yeah, but if you want like that's something if it's up to you. Do you want to be in a war-like situation because you love war and you love to like constantly fight? Then okay, agency. But if you love to be more like a shepherd on just herd your like sheep, then maybe I mean like that's not something for you. So yeah.
Right. So AB, what's your final take on like the agency life?
No, it's so for me, agency, the simple difference between an agency and normal, let's say, working on the brand side of things is if you want to do multiple stuff, different things that keeps you engaging on your toes and sort of gets your creative juices flowing every day, and not every day is boring, then you do agency. If you want to sort of look at the bigger picture stuff, you want to like really build like massive value, if you want to see something grow, and there are like other tangible, I would say, commercial aspects that sort of engage you a little more, then obviously probably the brand side of things are better, or the marketing side of things are better suited for you than the agency one. But yeah, just on a side note, I love how we started the podcast with the idea of, giving a perspective of what an agency life is and trying to make more people sort of consider the agency life. But we gave all the reasons in terms of what is wrong with agency life. It's tough, you don't have your boss, it's like a warlike situation.
No, but I
So
think the next episode can cover like all the positives. I think this
yeah,
time
no,
won't
but
be.
a lot of positive here as well. Like if you
These
the
are, yeah, positives. Yeah, it depends on a personality. What a person
personality, yeah,
like.
yeah,
Not everyone likes like that sober, dull kind of a job where they
exactly.
like to think,
Mm,
because some people love to challenge their brain and like their
right.
brain also that doesn't like
So that's
uh,
why I said that, if you want to keep your creative juices going, if you really want to do something new every day, you don't want the your previous work day to be same as today and probably the same as tomorrow. Agency is probably the life for you. Obviously, it's going to be tough. As you can see, you'll probably be shooting a podcast at 1 a.m. at night.
Yeah,
You'll be down with 1,000 cups of coffee throughout the day after like probably 100 hours of call with clients, then 200 hours of meeting with your own team, with everybody giving you your own creative inputs, and you have to choose between which one's better, where all of them might be better, but your client has a different mandate. So yeah, but these are like good problems to have. So it's
correct.
not that it's going to be an easy life. It's not just going to be like, it's going to be like, oh, you'll be creating like a Picasso, or like you'll be like a Picasso, and you'll be creating something like a Mona Lisa. But yeah, it's going to be like a fun experience if you want the rush of it.
Absolutely. So, just like final thought, this episode, we obviously wanted to keep it more centric towards, people wanting to work in agencies. We do want to do a follow-up, I think, for the agency life, maybe next time. And I think that we can sort of cover more the business side of it,
Yeah.
um, from all our perspectives, from like freelance to agency, working with bigger clients. I think all of us between us have worked with some very huge clients. So we can obviously talk about that experience as well, and
Yeah.
more from the sales side, more from marketing, also from the creative like expectations and all. So yeah, just like a final thought, definitely I think anybody wanting to join an agency, the only two things to look at initially is like, do you want to work on multiple things, multiple clients, or do you want to just really do a deep dive into just one thing? And I think sometimes people require both to, kind of in the early on in their career. But I think as you grow, like you really know, you pick a path, right? Like I think
Yeah.
people who love the agency life at a later stage, they can't work for a brand. And I think people who work for a brand, they probably can't, keep switching their mind to, today you're working on like a X post for one client, and then all of a sudden you're working on an Instagram post.
Mm.
Maybe then you're making like, some other thing for some other client. So I think people also sometimes just want singular focus, and people who are generalists just get bored with doing the same thing again and again. I think obviously, like that agency stuff. So that's, I think, just in a nutshell what it is. But yeah, great guys. I think this was like a good first sort of go at this for all of us. I think hopefully next time, we do this, it will be sort of more focused on a few topics that may interest the audience as well. So we will try and focus more on the business side next time. But yes, thanks for you guys to give your time for this, and thanks for whoever is going to end up watching this at least till the end of it. And if anybody has any questions, do leave us some feedback either in the comment section, or you can mail us. Our website is www.theantialias.com. All our contact info is on there. And if you guys just want to reach out to us, via email or just WhatsApp, then just feel free. And then, we look forward to you guys tuning in next time. We would be doing a series, of these episodes. So with different topics, obviously going forward. But we'll keep you posted on that. So thank you, everyone. Thanks, Lark. Thanks, Aviroop. And thanks, everyone else. Bye.